In this episode, I'm going to cover widget configurations. I'll start off by using the IsWidget, then I'll show how to use the GXT Composite, and after that I'll show how to use the GWT Composite. So to get started, I'm going to go to my IDE, which is an Eclipse in this case, and what I want to do is start out by creating a class that I can implement my IsWidget. So I'm going to right click, and this is going to be a generic widget that I'm going to use and construct. And so I'm going to go New Class, and I'm going to call it my vertical widget. I'm going to put a vertical container in here, and I'll show you why I'm going to use IsWidget in this case. So my vertical widget is going to implements IsWidget, and I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to import this library, or this class, import IsWidget. And what I want to do is, so implements, the implementation of IsWidget is not completed in this class yet, so it's red underlining it. So I'm going to go Command 1 on my IDE. It might be Control 1 on your IDE, if it depends on the operating system or your key bindings. So I'm going to go Add Unimplemented Methods. And what this does is, when the widget is constructed in GWT, it wants to return a widget when IsWidget is called. So let's just say what this is perfect for is returning the widget that you're using. So in this case, I want to return a vertical container. So I'll just work this backwards, vertical container, and I'll type in vertical container, vertical layout container equals vertical container equals new vertical layout container. Okay, so I'm going to import this library or this class, auto import. Okay, I'm going to save it and then auto import. Okay, there it is. Shift Command O for auto import. Oops, I misspelled that. So I'm going to copy the right and pass it to the left. Okay, so now it's completed. I have a vertical container. So I'm going to save this so the red X goes away on the left there in the package view or Explorer. And what this does is, when this widget is constructed, it's not wrapping the vertical container. Now I'll show how the composites wrap the widget that you're constructing, or the widgets, but in this case it's vertical container. Well, the next thing I want to show is how to cache this widget so it's not called or constructed or initialized every time you actually attach this widget to the DOM. And then I'll talk about some of the pros and cons to it. So let's look at doing that. So what I want to do is actually make this a field. And so this is going to be a private field. So it'll cache it once it's instantiated. So, but I got to do it MPE guard here, or check, or conditional. So I'll go if statement, and I'll go vertical if vertical container is not null, or is null. And what I want to do is construct it if it is null. So there we go. Now I have constructed a vertical container when the widget is attached to the DOM. So when this widget is added to the GWT widget hierarchy, it is now attached to the DOM. Now the great thing about this with GXT layouts is the widget is the vertical layout container gets attached, not the wrapping widget, which I'll show that in a moment, the composites. And this means if the parent sizes the child, which is, let's say the parent is a simple container, it's going to pass along sizing to this child vertical container because that's the container that is returned. So that is the IsWidget. Now there is some cons, because each time you need to call it, you've got to call, at least the first time you got to call IsWidget, because there's a potential possibility in here, because it's getting constructed here. You just have to construct and initialize your other widgets and components in here as well. If you were to construct them, you can instantiate them in the constructor, but I recommend instantiate it at the time that it gets constructed, so that way you don't have extra weight if you don't use the widget. And then you just have to be aware that there's a possibility to having an MPE, a null pointer exception, if something hasn't been constructed and you call it. Let's say you have a helper method and you go get vertical container, there's a possibility that it hasn't been attached and could be null. So you just have to add null checks or conditionals to verify or expect it to be null on the return. So that's IsWidget. What is the next option? So I'm going to do another one. Let's just do new class, and let's call this my GXT Composite widget. And by the way, I'll put this in the gist so you can actually see the construction. And the link to the guide on GXT docs will be in the description as well in the below this video. Okay, so my GXT Composite widget, what does that mean? Well, this is an extension instead of an implementation because it provides a widget wrapper. So what does that look like? So extends, and I'm going to go Composite. Now you have to be careful here importing this class. So I'm going to go Command 1, and you can see there's two classes, GXT Composite and the GWT Composite. I'll go over the GWT Composite next. The GXT Composite has additional functionality. So I command click up to the class or control click on depending on your operating system, and I'm going to look down, and it just provides some additional options in here. And the main one I want to point out is, let's scroll down, there should be an on resize. So this widget component, or this composite widget, works great for layouts as well. So, and I'll show you what I mean by that, because it delegates or passes on set pixel size, set height, width, and on resize events that may occur with the parent widget that it's a child of. So what does that mean? Let's go back and look at that. So in this construction type, let's look at the constructor. So I'm going to autocomplete this constructor. Command or control space will give the auto assist options, and then I auto completed it. Okay, so then what do I want to do in here? So the first thing I need to do to instantiate or initialize this widget goes init widget, and this is going to be my widget. And what will be my widget? Well, let's just use a vertical container so you can compare to the other one. Vertical layout container, VLC equals new vertical layout container. Okay, auto import that class. VLC is now, what do I want to do? Well, this, you can see I don't want to return its own widget reference, so I'm going to go VLC. So when this widget is attached, it's going to attach the composite widget because that's what we're extending, but the VLC is going to be the root element in this widget. So in this case, we're still able to pass the sizing because the composite does the delegation from the parent to the child and then just has a handoff for those options. Now, it doesn't delegate everything like if you were to use IsWidget. So IsWidget is better in some cases because you're providing the widget directly, but if you want to use this method, you could use the composite as well. So this is another great way to use this widget construction for your layouts. Now the next option, I'm going to talk about the GWT Composite. So let's make one more class and call that my GWT Composite class. Okay, so class, my GWT Composite. Oh, I guess I don't need to name a class because it is a class. And then I'll say finish. And what this will do is let's look at doing the same thing as the GXT Composite, extends composite. And in this case, I'm going to command 1 for bringing up the auto assist. And I'm going to select GWT user or the GWT library. You can see here it's pointing to GWT. So when you construct it, just make sure you have the right composite extension. Okay, so the same thing has to be done with my composite widget, and I'm going to copy this. Let's go copy and go back to the other one, and I'll copy the constructor and replace the constructor. Well, let's look at the composite extension to see what it does. Well, in this case, you can, if I scroll down, it's not going to pass along or delegate the sizing. That's something I have to explicitly state that says, okay, if I'm using a vertical layout container, and this goes for all the layout containers, anything that's programmatically sized from the parent. And we cover that more in the guides if you want to go over that. But just keep that in mind. If you want the sizing to be passed on, you're going to have to pass it on. So you could say, also add implements requires Let's look at this. Requires resize, and then let's add that implementation. And on resize, I could pass along and say, okay, force layout on the VLC. Now, I'm not going to cover the specifics here. I don't like to recommend using this for layouts. You could use it for flow sizing and flow or leaf nodes that don't need to be passed, or you can break the sizing chain by using this encapsulated widget because you no longer need to pass sizing on to the child. The point is that this composite wraps the VLC and blocks all the delegation of the methods unless we provide the implementation like the other resizing widgets do. So the main point here is if you're using the GWT Composite, you may be blocking some of the resizing calls. So that's the 3 widget types: IsWidget, GXT Composite, and GWT Composite for constructing a widget that I'm going over today. That covers it for today. Thanks for watching. Follow me for more tips and tricks on GXT, and I'll catch you later.